United States ought to eliminate their nuclear arsenals of intercontinental ballistic missiles. Contention 1, freedom is not free. 1, CPGS or conventional prompt global strike. Developments inevitable coming now, men. 19, major programs to further conventional prompt global strike. Commitment to hypersonic bombs becomes evidence of conventional prompt global strike program. 6, capability to hit targets worldwide in under 60 minutes. 2, but those will serve as a niche capability. CRS. 19, the project mission is a niche capability to rational use may only interfere in a small number of these weapons. 3, SQUO CPGS is unusable and causes nuclear war due to warhead ambiguity. Obvious. 17, Russian cannot be certain if the missile nuclear conventional war has untaken consequences of CPGS ambiguity triggering Russian nuclear strike cooperation will not mitigate the risk. 4, eliminating nuclear warheads and ICBMs ensures PGS advances well beyond the niche capability. Butterworth. 15, practical technical combat capabilities and the version to put on the trial properly being focused on airplanes and submarine launch. Missile the ICBM portion of the community contribution on minimum. Missile could be for non-nuclear warheads conversion of the ICBM first would go well beyond the limited niche capability enhancing deterrence. 5, that solves warhead ambiguity and boosts U.S. hedge. Butterworth. 15, the ambiguity problem will greatly reduced because the U.S. would have any nuclear armed ICBMs deployed on all conventional ICBM force warfighting capabilities to help the U.S. forces and regional war respond to urban aggression and provide additional assurance to administer dominance on the nuclear threshold, helping control escalation. 6, unilaterally eliminating ICBM solves or reduces incentives for escalation, miscalc, and accidents and boosts U.S. international prestige. Marvin. 11, the U.S. eliminating intercontinental ballistic missiles, directly improving international perception of the U.S. without compromising safety. Eliminating one leg of nuclear travel, but also an international goodwill and respect would preserve ability to deter bomber aircraft from recalled or redirecting ballistic missiles launches, not obviously being targeted. The new U.S. nuclear launchers were risk-taking crisis, could be misinterpreted, giving them enormous incentive to launch missiles against the U.S. The U.S. will continue reliance on SME first to advance, deter advanced powers like the bomber will deter small nuclear armed states. 7, eliminating ICBMs is key to a 21st century deterrence strategy that solves nuclear war. Remember, bridges proliferate and boost the credibility of American deterrence. Talbot. 18, bombers prove equally reliable delivering nuclear weapons. A submarine will match the times ICBMs to target retaliation for ICBM would require Russian missiles are only responsive against Russia. Their conventional military capabilities are key strategic deterrence in the 21st century. Even on-state actions require nuclear weapons. Conventional deterrence only rely on nuclear aggression by nuclear armed regime is only through conventional power. The part of Washington prevent conventional aggression. The United States conventionally to nuclear powers, especially the U.S. should further develop conventional probable strike weapons to strike targets anywhere in the world in less than hours to provide the necessary power to deter or to defeat nuclear rogue states or to original nuclear states without asking the conflict by nuclear escalation of a submarine fleet moves stealthily. It cannot be targeted for strike elimination. The minimum would allow submarines to carry more warheads. The larger force of nuclear bombs, the conventional weapons could be counter perception that the U.S. may not be willing to retaliate against nuclear use. Credibility to key deterrence emphasis being demonstrating improved capability. 8, only eliminating ICBMs can prevent accidents, nuclear aggression, nuke terror, and boost U.S. prestige. $4 billion in savings solves every existential threat to oil. 16, modernization is infrastructure needed to address the urgent special powerful special interests of profit from the new set of elected prudent strategy known as how they would pay for restriction essential conventional capabilities that would undercut America's influence in the road alliances. U.S. security would not be weakened. Decommissioning ICBM would eliminate cyber attack. Term plans represent prudent investment giving cyber terrorism, cyber attacks, pandemics, environment degradation. Option 2 stated an estimated $432 billion. Also reducing incentive for Russia to consider deployment of the STAR method. Reducing incentive for Russia in trying to deploy nuclear funds made available could be shifted. This would signal desire to leave and remove ICBMs to be easily verified using satellite. 8 or 9, U.S. global primacy is key to stop every existential risk. I don't want to rogue at all. 18, U.S. military superiority research pivotal moment. America should take an international leadership role to secure the international order, democratic values, and facilitate human rights to uphold favor on account and power and key duties to deter aggression by public use influence. Versus our foundation military strength to deter aggression by Soviet Union, account as stability, prevented authoritarian powers and world wars. Of leadership project unprecedented growth and human freedom and avoided global depression that would cause poverty, radicalism, international aggression, the rise of authoritarian rebels seeking to power over China, and Russia conducting a comprehensive nuclear modernization, escalate to conflict, no can be detonating nuclear weapon regime, also continue to develop biological capabilities and utilize terrorism to pursue Germany ability to rank and obstruct freedom and inflict substantial costs from radical jihadist groups have shown continued interest of weapons of mass destruction, command or deadly attacks, complete training with American opportunity, adequate military capabilities, rivals being bold in peace and deterrence, trust in the U.S. that deterrence weakens, war becomes more likely, war with chemical and biological warfare. 10, prolific causes war, best features, books and war horror. 16, new nuclear states will turn new and mirrors in the actual nuclear use warning system for beneficial opinion for terrorist attack of major country. 20, cases of risk of nuclear war, the more nuclear states are probably the nuclear states incentives to create quasi-doomsday nuclear pressure loss and escalation possession nuclear weapons not deter conventional attack and both statistical in case studies nuclear pressure states destabilizing asymmetrical escalatory force prospects of the nuclear powers will not have truly survival versus making stuff to a first strike attack the risk of unforeseen crisis dynamics that could quickly spin out of control. Contention 2, no fighting in the war room. 1, ICBMs will be accidental nuclear war inevitable. Wilson and Williams. 16, ICBM overhaul costs like 85 billion. ICBM arsenal do nothing counter real threats. ICBM style consumer version satellites and bulletproof first strike. ICBMs guarantee striking strike capability making ICBMs return between a submarine force and strategic bombers returns not require the ICBM reduce the person's reaction time usually lose its scenario because nuclear warfare simple technical glitch the American system ICBM complicates. This is making progress in nuclear launch. ICBM is easily handled by today by our fleets of sub-launch missiles and bombers with abilities could be investing in conventional forces advancing America's interests abroad. 2, only ICBMs can cause accidents. Paltrow. 17, the ICBMs most likely cause accidents to nuclear war false parties. Warnings to the rise from human error, malfunctioning early warning satellites are hanging by third parties for saying lying us and the other 2 legs with more time to stab bombers. You may recall nuclear missiles are detectable version of data sets to be knocked out and emerging decision would be apocalyptic. 3, only ICBMs cause adversary counter force and incentivize first strike. SSB and second strike stalls war more. 18, the safest legacy of known to deter attacks is difficult to look and destroy single SSB and impossible limit all each SSB capable of fracturing temperature damage and outside the air like more than enough redundancy. The SSB portion of the tried is most dangerous adversaries are incentivized to preemptively damage targeting ICBM satellite temptation that wouldn't exist without ICBMs. 4, even a limited nuclear war would cause extinction. Best science crib 17, 17. The biggest killer of all is the nuclear winter. Biology contains things real possibility of improved models, diffuse, beyond one. Every human the global nuclear arsenal, even limit conflict nuclear, the entire world, nuclear war is highly unlikely, as things will very quickly spiral out of control. Contention 3, the tortoise and the hare. 1, ICBMs are financially unsustainable and trigger U.S. special arms racing, elimination, fall star. 17, maintaining missiles and systems of submarine diversion and detectable monitoring will cost more than $1 trillion to replace current ICBM forces trapped in the minimum of Russia. Another mission nuclear power American cities for non-proliferation and breeding. North Korea's nuclear weapons for submarines, one thing for land based ICBMs and the minimum can do that. And SBM can subs almost impossible to detect and deadly attack on home. Country user nuclear strike submarines would be impossible to track down and destroy nuclear minimum. Make sure your new arms first means and starts with scrapping the minimum 3s. 2, ICBMs are the reason Russia is modernizing its nukes, eliminating encourages reductions in arsenal size. 16, getting rid of ICBMs encourage Russia to reduce arsenal, cutting ICBMs to prevent a nuclear arms race with Russia. 3, military incentives means Russia abandons the arms race. Blair et al. 18, vast war hydraulic can be accomplished peacefully, elimination and minimum Russia dragging her rationale for becoming war and pathway scrapping. What about the work from Russian justification where rockets Russia would have very and curve missile production and positive feedback loop could take hold. 4, U.S. Russia arms racing cascades and causes nuclear war. In Bolsa 18, Russia has not revealed nuclear arsenal, including ICBMs, ongoing competition for security. Russian armed Americans seem to be locking arms race and stability results in action reaction cycle nuclear deployment leading to both vulnerable to nuclear use or by accident or miscalculation. 5, U.S. Russia tensions impactful to the collapse of global order and makes war never. Abroad 18, ethnic religious composition of the extreme proliferation requires strengthening institutions and the consolidation of non-proliferation tensions between Russia and the U.S. threaten to destroy.
Cool. Card cut out.
Destroy.
Okay. I review for cross-ups.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the Butterworth evidence. How would other countries, or I guess, or what is PGS?
So CPGS is conventional prompt global strike. It's our ability to strike anywhere in the world conventionally and under an hour.
Okay. How do other states know that we have removed the nuclear warhead portion of that?
I'm not sure which card, but it says that it's verifiable by, I want to say satellites. I will commit that if you want.
Okay.
The removal of ICBMs could be easily verified using satellites or other airborne imagery.
Wait, your Butterworth evidence says that there's warhead ambiguity. Why would satellites not?
So you can verify via satellites whether or not we have like nuclear ICBMs stored up in our arsenals, but in like the time crunch pressure of an ICBM being launched, there's no way to detect in the air whether or not it is nuclear tipped.
Wait, so other countries can detect what like exactly the weapons that exist in our stockpiles?
They can determine whether it's nuclear using like satellite imagery that's looking at arsenals. Huh?
Are they stored together?
I'm very confused. The warhead ambiguity isn't about like they don't know what
I
we have. It's about they don't know when we launch whether we've launched something conventional or nuclear. Obviously, a satellite can't like track down a missile flying through the air in time to like provide.
Let's talk about this Marvin evidence. It just says that it would improve international perceptions of the U.S. Why does that mean privacy?
It improves like I'm confused. I feel like
the card is just like, oh, like people respect the United States more. Why does that mean that the U.S. necessarily gets enough privacy to actually be able to influence things like non-democratic institutions?
So first off, I think there are other internal links to hegemony. So that's sort of like the soft power internal link. There's also like a hard power internal link about the importance of conventional deterrence. Second, I think that the card warrants why it would the hard power internal link. So our argument right now is we need to like boosting CPGS is good. It boosts our conventional deterrence. There's a couple warrants why conventional deterrence is key to hegemony. First, nuclear deterrence is incredible because people don't believe that we will nuclear retaliate, which means conventional deterrence is key to retaliate against those. Second, conventional deterrence.
Why does lack of nuclear deterrence or ambiguity of nuclear deterrence mean that conventional deterrence will be able to solve that for this?
I'm confused by your question. Our argument is that we cause a development of CPGS, and CPGS is good and key to conventional deterrence.
Okay,
and that a combination of conventional and nuclear deterrence is key to preserving American hegemony. Over-reliance on nuclear deterrence is bad.
Okay.
That's the Talbot card.
Does the Edelman evidence make a claim about whether hegemony exists in the status quo or whether like
it actually explicitly makes a claim and says that the U.S. military superiority has reached a pivotal moment. The argument is that the U.S. or the affirmative is able to preserve and boost American hegemony.
This card is in the context of like the U.S. going in and being able to like actively uphold human rights, defend democratic values, etc. What about the affirmative would cause his active interventions?
I don't think it's solely in the context of active interventions. I also think it's in the context of deterring things like rogue proliferation, Iran, NOCO, Russia, etc. Second, I think that boosting our I think that CPGS is explicitly an ability to conventionally intervene.
Or what countries do you solve in terms of Prolif?
So I think first off, our Brooks and Wolf card isn't about like a specific scenario. It's rather a structural claim that when more countries are able to get nuclear weapons, it gets worse. But examples would include Iran, Saudi Arabia, Japan, etc.
Okay, that's fine. It'll be 4 then case.
Yeah, you should check on the street. Is that on paper?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
How much do you need?
5 cards. Is it like enough in case that I need more than one?
You might need more than one.
I don't want to like steal all of it.
You can keep all the paper.
Which I know
yeah,
like
I don't have to
it's
take
good
more rounds today.
what you want, but
What? Dude, I'm kind of relieved I don't have to debate on one card.
my pen go. My singular writing implement. Oh,
Dude,
But thanks. Next thing, I'm just gonna be borrowing someone's computer, honestly.
I actually did that today. My computer crashed now.
Okay.
Are you good?
Oh wait, sorry, I was really. Okay, I am.
Okay, everybody. First off, interpretation, the affirmative is complete elimination of nuclear arsenals. Kyle 10, eliminate 1 unreasonable interpretation, complete elimination 1. Elimination notes, complete removal, so completely unnecessary. Partial removal is modification, not elimination. Gilbertson. 4 measures that exempt certain phase elimination, accurate modification. Would be accurate. Eliminate implies complete removal. Oxford Dictionary, completely remove violation. The U.S. nuclear arsenal is ICBMs plus clear 19. U.S. nuclear arsenal, entire strategic target to interconnected ballistic missiles, ICBMs, launch ballistic missiles, SLBMs, and long range bombers. First is limits. No functional limits on the topic when you specify any weapon at any permutation that kills fairness under a limited topic and massive negative cases. Heavily skews the prep reference and the deceptive from the few response to the after. On the charge of average kills engagement, linked to any adaptive classroom. Here's the list of nuclear weapons. It's attached to the doc. There's 110 permutations of weapons. Means that it's literally a decillion F2 is ground parameters of resolution. Let's say F nearly every corner distance, like deterrence by weapon. Should be dropped to shoot the ground because all these tests are contingent on total elimination. Give them more to the battle, which is definitely under TV itself. So you get read advantage areas by specific arsenal. Just have to love my offense. Link to it. Fairness to the voter. Judge considerable evaluate that debate. Impossible to run dispute. Educate the voter. The only portable skill that we get from debating drop. The debater 7 skills 1 is structure. 1 air future for the alpha that 7 6 times cube. And they get 2 speeches by 1. Use competing answers. A reasonably arbitrary force. Judge in front of B is norm setting. We find the best possible norm. C reasonably collapse. Use the offensive and spread time to value. Bright lines. No RDS. A logical issue. 1 for defending topic. B is baiting. They'll theory and property justice if an abuse. T always theory. E is time for my 3 weeks to my norm to get any time and B by disintegration for original speaking. And TF next is a diseducated alliances on the brink from the US main advantage for East Asian war material. 18. Japan's security concerns focus on China and North Korea reliable US security. Have played a key role in maintaining Japan's unique for rounds against nuclear weapons with China and Korea more than ever relies on US security guarantees to Trump for question US commitments to Korea may be pushed to use policy of nuclear forbearance. Forceful Chinese direction on the realm of the possible Robert Afghan acquisition would be combated by much of South Korean nuclear removal US security was vastly augment instability in East Asia and so go to the mutual distrust between the two escalation of the conflict and the need to check with nuclear with high Terry. 1970 not detective nuclear why hasn't served in Japan nuclear is the face of American nuclear umbrellas to which a nuclear Japan would fall weakening with an arms race chance of catastrophic conflict increase and ICBMs are sophisticated Japan and South Korea extended deterrence accord after credible and refer this code as the most specific to the scenario critical 18 ICBMs to credibly exceed deterrence and US must be capable of nuclear weapon against nuclear to protect Tokyo from nuclear attack US aircraft from the illegally arriving having Tokyo would not be circling that SLBMs would be reassured US ICBMs arrive in a half hour and validity ICBMs contribute to assurance you can see ICBMs critical how US and allies can protect what ICBMs are necessary states and signal credibility by putting money where they matter investing to modernize ICBMs sends a clear signal of US commitment to nuclear deterrence if US cancels nuclear forces allies question Washington secure question US security US addressed by ICBM modernization that gives nuclear chance 15 East Asia arms systems to the most progressive conflicts rivals and open conflict division in North and South Korea so after the arms in East Asia is dangerous with the increased risk of miscalculation as a risk of misrepresenting the consequences of conflict not see original US and we draw in the likely rapidly escalating nuclear war to be the key player to put listening nuclear weapons next is a counterplan says the United federal government should ban deployment of PGS remove long-term warning posture for ICBMs and would adopt a new operational no first use structure for ICBMs limit BMD deployment that undermine the mutual vulnerability with Russia for the arbitral evidence renegotiate that ratify the new START treaty first 3 points of accident cyber text and miscal and young team removing long-term warning means that we don't examine themselves on problem status acting long-term warning with only risk of mistake launch percent running and misrepresented warning and also limited risk of accidental on authorized launches last 2 points solve the root cause of US Russia arms racing arbitral 18 legal binding commitment sexual limitation guarantee the system of aim and Russian missile shooting false sheet WC mentality settlements in Russia's nuclear potential mean evident Korean power sets impossible and accountability the loss would not diminish a consequence of force the US has granted and nullifying Russian deterrent combination for precision offense system and missile system distribution of the US BME is called by open-ended as limited to do jointly elaborated by expert that's recommended by missiles covered by rogue state required by different defenses and then when directed against Russia shooting multi prevents extremely consequences scenario 15 someone be reported that this issue remains the principle something want to a follow an agreement to start a deal with limited system that more than 200 to 300 long range missiles enough to deal without a nuclear state community by the limited speed of their 5 kilometers forward deployed US signal simply not be used for the abuse. This is only that solves their 1 EC Talbot evidence. The misreason guidance to that the US nuclear arsenal split in central the result the report advocating between their nuclear triad and lower warhead delivery level and recorded with New Start. Next is the dissent seats on cyber attacks are on the rise of Sony 18 some cyber attacks recommended to do battlefield currently 15 Queens of a driver for state like the features and as a Western and Russia, Iran and North Korea key by 2020 absence of several general wars source and any US weapons are key to deter cyber attacks on the risk provision 18 broadly range of attacks that turn into US retaliation counter but you can anyone who does cyber that with the US version attack the Russian power Ukraine aggression will for assault the US grid collapse of power grid causes nuclear metron causes extinction 11 alternate power grid of the nuclear power grid something going to emergency ready to avoid a multiplication of sound element you need to fuel and workers at any facility on time in the field and label of total chaos imagine 100 nuclear plants opening melted and once the title of radiation plane supply to deliver the final question with the human civilization in the case that first advantage 1 the US will lose conventional war against Russia and China that sees a global war 19 French have 100 instrument media range of the U.S. and missile can fly precisely to Russia using conventional within conflict. China is assembling huge missile force to counter America, locking conventional arms defense to American forces simulation bombing China and Russia. Two, PGS is even more destabilizing than nuclear weapons and Marvel's first coming through nuclear weapons of China, nuclear war cutting them in people. 15, Russia may not be able to defeat PGS for small, only option nuclear weapons. It may not be able to deter conventional attack with China's new first use policy. Conventional attack would place in past position, greatly influence our nuclear retaliatory capability. The effect of the nuclear deterrent China will violate new first use. Would not be that decision complicating ambiguity of application of the first use policy. Other significant China by retaliating nuclear weapons. 3, U.S. hypersonic development causes India and Russia hypersonic development. We're trying to, in all 15 advanced precision capability, remaining necessary still require in order to future investment to fully manifest more likely about Russian eventual acquisition of conventional boost-side weapons into the done deal that's uncomfortable sanction of future conventional arms use from which no suited likely benefit possibly would have their arms developing in the range of suited result of the states concerned about being left behind military and with their future intentions with potential adversaries are being inherently unknowable, categorically unknowable. India's hypersonic weapons cause forces Pakistan and to use airstrike causes war. I'm in 429. S-400 when they deploy the border was found. They will find India with 600 kms radar coverage of protection with 17,000 kms an hour, jelly in the army stuff in range. This Chinese military right India is trying to Pakistan and one significant implications for Pakistan airborne missile program within the week of all Pakistan and launched too many missiles fighter jet continue impossible the S-400 to deter zero penetration. Such an attack will come at a high impact militarily, categorically military, in nuclear war, cause extinction, jobs in 19 nuclear war explosion, both sizable areas, so we said 6 million to develop 30% of the Earth line, 5 degrees Celsius cooling, and huge rainfall, 30% globally. India, China, precipitating up to zero. The United States, decline 50%. India, Pakistan, stuff everyone, and 23 million fatalities, and to let the landslide and mass starvation. The second advantage, the European vaccines, I see with increased decision time. PC 78. The possibility of accident is 0, so we can all the concerns are that merit in 1983 the worst percent of the order was ever going to be launched due to the comprehensive training with the precisely executed discipline possible immediately determine the cost of missile defense, greatly improve the wording and assessment capability. False point will not have an auto launch. The US and no policy. The entire deterrent is new presidential company or inadvertently launched. The third advantage, one ICBMs security assurance deterrent. The case for 78 ICBMs essential assuring allies this environment increasing public subject to surprise opportunity for the capability modernization. Our plans are necessary to provide capability GBSE greatly complex Chinese and Russian Chinese war planning. The inject ground in addition to being we send a strong to actions allies. The US wavering in two way categorical no war tension can be disputed and Z119 and we was waiting a cool work policy the Russia first Russia no with the global nature of the Soviet Union and we're so much with Russia as the UN imposing sanctions directing nation we can deconflict our bridges third NATO more than half of a military spreading. They represent a stronger tripwire. Fourth European nations with sanction of Russian economy is not fun to sway any of Russia or Ukraine or Georgia or Baltics. Sunday marked off.
If you just cut those 2 cards, I think I got it.
And they get cut.
Ah, okay, inside it because I missed one. You can do all the way across them. Good. So that's the PowerPoint. They're conditional. Can you keep blanks? The cyber decide. Why are ICBMs key / why do subs not fill in?
We say that the weapon has to be able to immediately retaliate through first use, otherwise it wouldn't be.
Why are subs not able to immediately retaliate through first use?
We say that that's in our Japan prolif just said. ICBMs are the only ones that can retaliate quick enough to a cyber attack
Why?
that it would project. Well, like the chronic evidence says that ICBMs basically a U.S. aircraft would be unable to arrive in time to be.
I understand why bombers aren't fast enough. Why are sub-launch missiles not
The
fast enough?
position of SLBMs is made uncertain just by the nature of the way that they work, which means that retaliation would not be quick enough.
Wait, but we know where they are. They're uncertain to the other countries. We know where our subs are.
No, the
so why
argument is that we need to
retaliate?
be able to provide quick deterrence, quick retaliation.
Okay, wait.
Well, the second warrant for this evidence is that anytime the U.S. would reduce its nuclear arsenals, it would reduce its sort of posturing, which would remove that sort of deterrent factor, which is the chronometer case.
That's fine. Name a scenario, or what is unique about ICMs in terms of deterrence, specifically in the context of your Japan decide. What is a scenario that ICMs could respond to, but subs or bombers couldn't?
A couple of warrants. The card says that U.S. aircraft would not arrive in time to Tokyo and does not know about the position of SLBMs. That kills assurance for Tokyo, and because they know that this is intrinsic to the nature of the way that.
Wait, why does Tokyo not knowing where our SLBMs are mean that they don't trust us to launch the SLBMs response?
Well, Tokyo and South Korea have talked about why ICBMs are critical and how without that inclusion of ICBMs, they would not believe that it would be a security guarantee. So even if it might physically deter, it's a question of signaling, e.g. what do South Korea and Japan think? Any collapse of deterrence perceptually would cause them to proliferate.
How do South Korea and Japan proliferate?
What do you mean how? They start developing.
How do they get the materials?
They both have the technology to field their nuclear weapons. That's
Which evidence is that?
That's the Terry evidence.
Where?
South Korea and Japan both have the technology to field their own nuclear weapons in relatively short order. And then the card continues to say that they haven't nuclearized because of the American nuclear.
Got you. The Cunningham and Fravel 15 card was the warrant.
Sorry, where is that?
It's the second one on under hedge.
Yeah, the argument is that China would believe that they are unable to deter an attack as long as the United States deploys PGS. As a result, they're more likely to shred their NFU policy and like they very vaguely shred their NFU policy and is more likely to first strike.
That makes sense. U.S. hypersonic development. Where do you read that it's not coming now?
No, the argument is our argument is that like what you say that they serve a niche capability. When you shift that away and make them fully capable, that would cause development in response.
I'll run prep. Where is it? Just draw the distinction between like how much hypersonics we're developing, because it just seems to be like if we have hypersonics, they will want hypersonics. So why does it matter how many hypersonics we have?
It says that they require some investment to fully manifest, and then it says that afterwards that would cause a conventional arms race. That assumes your evidence about it currently not filling a niche capability. That's in the evidence.
T, case, and the rest of the opposite order. So, like the Japan, South Korea, Pearl stuff, the counterclaim, the cyber attacks, the same.
Order on cases.
Advantages in that. Everybody?
So it's T, and then the rest of this stuff.
Yeah. The only thing that's skipping is cases at the bottom, otherwise the bottom.
Okay.
Okay, cool.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
1. We meet nuclear arsenals refers only to ICBMs earnest. 18. Nuclear arsenals known as the ICBM. 2. Arsenal refers to a single device P, RE, and PP. The methodology report 6. The term arsenals includes the possibility of a single device. 3. Arsenals collection of weapons bearing Webster. Collection of weapons. 4. We meet planters in the vacuums with ritual states. The plan completely eliminates nuclear arsenals ICBMs. 5. Or skip that one. 6. Prefer A. After on pixel, the same debates in reverse, which is now worse since more like breaking their one error. This time countries with no universal advantage means the TV doesn't solve. B. Topic education. Most topic advocates for reduction because everyone thinks we need some sort of nuclear deterrent. Over limiting produces stale debates and discourages research. C. There's no limits. Often solvency advocate functional limits by the topic to deter generic like deterrence and case check. 8. Pragmatism way framers intended ground on definition of excellence and debate when debaters consider certain was not grammar bullshit. Their terminal impact is predictability begs the question of pragmatics. 9. Use reasonability. Key to frivolous 3. Evaluating office with the inherent substance of voting off a T intervention is inevitable. So intervening for substance. 10. Drop the argument key to return to substance. We should reevaluate the after their interpretation. The case. We're going for the hedge advantage. 2 internal links. 1 to boosting CPGS. 1 is warhead ambiguity. In the status quo, it's impossible to tell whether it's a nuclear or conventional ICBM, which means that they're functionally unusable. The app resolves that by making sure that they're only conventional. The second is international singling. They can see the perception warrant that it boosts international goodwill and credibility. In order to boost international goodwill and credibility, which are all internal links that the case turns can't turn. Hedge should be an impact filter for your ballot. It is a dampener on every single conflict, since other countries won't want to go to war if they know that the U.S. will retaliate against them. And it proves that there's sort of like a limitation on the badness that any sort of conflict can have, and deterrence on and eternal defense to all of their off. If I win the hedge impact, the Indo-Pac stuff. 1 is hypersonics are coming now. It's just a question of if whether or not they're effective. That's the first card. Their card isn't specific to the distinction between some hypersonics and lots of hypersonics, which means you shouldn't do the work for them. 2, there's no Indo-Pac escalation gangly. 19 history series and cause for option there was cause for action currently. Nuclear escalation tactics spike India lockdown military operation mobilization was taking until use Southeast tensions attacks in the military establishment non-Russian Modi. Understand the escalation from group in the Indian military countries have only limited action. The principal it's theological justice not likely to escalate. 3, their evidence says that they would still pursue weapons even in the world of status quo, which means that they don't solve the line by the end of the case proper. They say the U.S. will lose a conventional war, but it assumes the status quo. We're able to boost our conventional capabilities, so we're able to win. They say that PGS is more disabled than nuclear weapons. 1 is that the modernization stalls because we're able to make them more effective and more targeted, which stalls back all of their impacts. 2nd is that no, it doesn't incentivize first strike because we have second strike capabilities that are subs warrants, which means that them being scared is good and it deters. That was the hedge stuff. On the top, not going for actions, I'll concede no risk, and I'll concede that there's no impact to the arms race. The first is said. 1 non-unique or journal evidence phenomenon says that allied proliferation is inevitable as long as the U.S. maintains ICBMs and an aggressive nuclear posture. 2 is CPGS subs. Specific evidence of replacing ICBMs with PGS subs bombers and bombers reassures allies. 3 0 reason why ICBMs are killed. Wilson evidence says ICBMs can only be used against Russia because the target anything else means it would have to overfly Russia, which would cause them to calculate nuclear. It means there's no conceivable way for ICBMs to protect allies. 4 second strike solves the strength to have a low threshold of defense player. 16 site finds that Andalusia public opinion among our allies believes that first use critical so that's long been discounted conventional force adequate counts is credibility threat which is retaliability against the second strike prerogative of the public nation would have to cast aside. It's a science with the U.S. 6 is that bombers that subs all of their offense, they're able to move just as quickly and be stationed underwater. Obviously, they're stationed undetectably, obviously, which means they can't be taken out by a first strike. They're infinitely better. Obviously, there's some level of trust that they have to have, even in the world of status quo, that the U.S. will have their back, which means that they will also trust the U.S. to have subs positioned close enough to be able to strike back, which means that there's no sort of impact to this. There is no sort of impact to this. I'll come back to that time. The counterplan, 1, it solves 0% of the first advantage. They literally make it impossible to eventually strike someone. And also gets rid of most of our nukes per the START Treaty. 2, permutation do both and prove to the aftermath permutation to place. And 3, the NFU doesn't solve A, people don't trust us, so it doesn't solve word ambiguity. B, it doesn't cause a funding shift because we still have to maintain the arsenals. 4, their Talbot evidence the same thing as Talbot quoting another report, not Talbot giving his own opinion. The dissent, 1, salvage the bombers check. I did that work above. 2, cyber attacks, 1 shuts on the group Brazilians measures check. Craig 16, actually shutting off relating from the cases far more complicated than mechanisms making single cyber criminals making access to power and utility data systems doesn't mean the result will be powder out control taking over control some power grids control by more than panel digital but it doesn't mean you've lost all control utility workers the ability to manage control machine tech organization evidence that Ukraine and the workers will be able to physically shut down the power. Back to the other dissent, they conceded head is it prevents proliferation because the U.S. doesn't want them to get nuclear weapons, so if they're scared of U.S. conventional deterrence, they won't go against the U.S. as well. Their evidence doesn't assume the boosted U.S. hedge of the affirmative, which means that there's no proliferation. That was our 1 is the evidence.
What was the 7 permutation on the counterplan?
Permutation do both, and permutation do the app, and every permutation flanks. Just like if you kick stuff, I sort of.
Okay.
better than I expected it to be.
Chicken
Which
wings
sounds
are
like I'm
so
being
salty.
a jerk about it, but they are legitimately really excellent.
The only good thing about Stanford. I'll say.
Sarah, if you eat all those fries before this round is over, I'm going to murder you.
Wait, where's that from?
Treehouse in New England.
Like, I'm definitely gonna
I think it's looking pretty late.
cool after this round. I know where I'm going.
Okay.
I am not ready.
Okay.
Cool.
Case, or T case.
He gets. Okay.
Alright.
I'm all good.
Topicalities drop the debate. It should be drop the debate. Drop the argument. Argument doesn't make any sense because the severance kills one and C structure. For example, if the one ear is defending a new affirmative because it's dropped the debate. Obviously, the tutor cannot read a new argument, which means that this argument is false. Also, it's key to deterrent future abuse. If you do not drop the debate, then they can just read super abusive arguments in the future. There's no RBIs, and it comes for all this other stuff in play. Which is that if I win topicality, I should win. I'm going to win three things. First, that the act model destroys limits. Two, that limits matters. And three, that limits outweighs every other standard ground. Vote negative for a limited topic that allows rigorous contestation of affirmative. That contestation debate cannot happen. So every other, in fact, clash, ask, grant, innovational, intrinsically matter. We prove even a risk of a link to the limits. That you should auto vote negative because it proves that their inter destroys debate as an activity. Their inter explodes limits. The NWA proves that 100 weapons in the U.S. alone permutation mean up to a decillion Fs, which I know is ridiculous, but they can pick tiny weapons that don't do anything. Authors don't write in context of weapons, but in context of countries that kills negative pre-mark. And in our clash, because they'll just pick the truest part of the topic. There's two uniqueness questions to frame the round. First, the next getting destroyed on the subject. There's no true topic. This is nukes good often stat best specifically the country or the region. Flips reasonability. Try or die for negative ground. So you should overcorrect to make debate more equitable and winnable on the negative. Two is education for LD foreign policy topic. Nuances are good. There's a still and not fun. Fairness also outweighs education. Force is intrinsic to debate. Fairness is a side constraint. They ask for their argument to be evaluated without hacking when presenting them in debate. Two, reversibility. We can always get literature to round readers, but if an unfavorable decision is permanent and the only thing that the ballot can resolve. Three, turns education. We get less clash and contestation in debate is unfair. Extend our interpretation. We read a couple of definitions, and I'm going to extend each of them. The first one, I read a couple of definitions, and I'm going to extend each of them. The first one that I read is from Kyle. It says that eliminate is only subject to one reasonable interpretation as an intent to define, unlike all of their other evidence, and it's also in the context of a specific court case, which means that it's most legally precise. The Gilbert set of it, also from a chief justice, it also says that eliminate is inaccurate, and that their definition would mean that modified is better, which means that even if they're under some interpretation, they might say that it might equal eliminate. It's much closer to the definition of modified, which means that it's not topical. The Oxford Dictionary definition would also take out the Merriam-Webster definition because it's just like common usage dictionary. The other sort of blind on this issue, the earnest 18 evidence. One, no intentions of just a passing reference to and sonic exclusives and nuclear arsenals are quote known as ICBMs. Not that ICBMs are the only nuclear arsenals, except the part that we read on the violation, which is that they have SLBMs and other weapons too, which means that all these means are garbage. PP and PP6. One, in the context of that specific paper, it's a footnote proof that it doesn't apply generically for the topic. Two, the card literally concedes that it's used loosely, which doesn't exclude our interpretation, and only our interpretation concrete intent to define. The Merriam-Webster argument defines arsenals, not eliminate, which means that it cannot be used as we need. The planets in a vacuum argument. One, even in a vacuum, there are efforts specify passive resolution. Two, eliminate is a verb that acts on arsenals or injure. Would say that parametricizing arsenals would change the definition of eliminate in a way that is illogical. The Pick's argument. One, that the negative possibly abusive does not justify that the act can be preemptively abusive, which would lead to absurd conclusions. Two, it's the wrong solution. If Pick's are really abusive, it should be easy to win one of your theory against a Pick voting athlete setting it over. The F is always preemptively abusive, which always all of their offensive magnitude. Three, no uniqueness, and leech debaters will always be abusive if they want to, even with plans. Debaters will read nib, skips, word picks, agent counterplans, etc. In fact, against abusive acts, debaters are more likely to read abusive strategies like agent counterplans, who they don't have any other strategy. Worse, because they steal like whole asks, they only link to the one ACD. Picks are not abusive. Just write asks more strategically. Arguments like strength of salient perception of the plan, or like the explosion of the exception will be exploited. All take out the solvency of the pick, which means that this argument is wrong. The topic education argument, no, this is wrong. You get better topic education when you're forced to defend a larger source of the topic. You can still defend a USF. You just cannot defend ICBM specifically. Two, is that topic the clash controls the internal into topic education. Even if we're able to present more articles initially, doesn't matter if we're not able to contest those articles. It's the interaction between arguments that makes debate unique, and anything else would just mean that you can just go and read a book. The third argument they make is that there's no limits argument. Yes, limits explosion. One, it's not an argument. You cannot just assert like functional limits that warrant. Two, like solvency advocate. These things don't check. Doesn't prove the existence of neg ground, and people will advocate for anything. Three, generics don't check. You'll always be more prepared for the debate. There's a limited number of generics, and there's less clash and topical engagement. They use reasonability argument. No, reasonability is bad. 8 points that it's arbitrary. There's no way to determine what is reasonable or not. 2 is that we've already won a reason why reasonability should flip negative. 3 is that competing interpretation is the best model for debate. No, best model for debate because reasonably collapses because you have to compare the right line against an offense-defense paradigm. Yet no, their argument about substance credit doesn't make any sense. It's just one topicality shell. It's not a frivolous shell, which means that this argument does not work. You should vote for topicality because their affirmative is incredibly abusive. It specifies both the country and the weapon, and their interpretation would justify specifying infinitely small acts that have no negative ground against them. Go to the case. Going for the impact scenario, yes, the first argument they make about hypersonics are coming down. Yes, that doesn't involve their affirmative concede that it's a niche capability. It's a signaling argument. Our future evidence accounts for it. It says that countries like India are looking towards exactly what countries like the United States are doing in terms of posturing with their PDS, which means that even if we have limited PDS now, it's a question of what the U.S. propagates at their main model. The hegemony argument supercharges the link to this because if it is true that the United States is trying to increase, that the United States would use these PGS, or that the United States would use PGS as a mechanism to be able to actively shift to a new conventional deterrent, other countries would see this and that would be an excuse to develop hypersonics. No, they haven't developed them yet. The Ahmed evidence says that the Ahmed evidence is contextualizing this and says that there are instances of like specific weapons that India is thinking of developing, not that they would actually develop. And it just says, and this the internal link to this is that Pakistan would preemptively use an airstrike versus India would cause India retaliation. Yes, for the Johnson evidence is very, very specific because it says it gives you a very specific warrant for extinction. They also don't have a terminal impact to the aft coast, so 1 AR they just extended without actually extending what the implication of hegemony is, which is that you cannot vote on this argument. The Gangley argument is wrong. Cannot account for things like shredded NFU in India and the ways in which the tensions would rise in a world in which India is massively increasing their hypersonics capabilities, which means that this evidence is wrong. It just cites a bunch of historical examples that being contextual. This outweighs every other argument. A, it turns the affirmative because it proves that there's an increased risk of war caused by the United States, which would dent U.S. credibility, respect for the United States, etc. 2, it increases the risk of conflict overall. Or evidence from future is excellent, and it says that there is going to be, in the world of hypersonics, India will be able to develop it, which causes impact war, which outweighs. Cool.
Case 2. Unsustainable. They've conceded that a class of hegemony, it means every single conflict is able to escalate to the level of nuclear because there's no sort of impact filter in order to cap it down. Also, is terminal defense of their impact because they've conceded on the other page that proliferation is deterred in the world, or that this sort of conflict is deterred in the world of the affirmative because nobody wants to upset the U.S. by going to war, which is terminal defense to their impact. The framing issue you should have here is that the status quo, they concede the status quo leads to conflict escalation and nuclear escalation because the U.S. hegemony collapses, which means that it's try or die for the affirmative. The line by line proper first is that hegemony solves all of this. All they say is that it increases development, but they conceded that if we boost hedge enough, it means that countries don't want to develop more weapons because they're afraid of upsetting the U.S., which means that it solves back. The second thing I'm going to go for is the no escalation stuff. They don't have an escalation warrant. They just read a card that it caused extinction if it was to go nuclear, and a card that they would counterforce each other, but no reason why they use nuclear weapons. Our card cites history and says that nuclear weapons have never been used in the past, and there's no reason hypersonics are different than every single instance of tension that happened in the past, which means that there's no risk of the impact on case. Tisha. The PIC standards flips their limits often. The debate is no longer a question of specification, good, bad, but whether specification should happen on the app or the neg. Our argument is that specification is inevitable because their interpretation encourages unbeatable picks out of singular nuclear weapons, which means the same prep order is created, but on the affirmative. Specification should happen in the 1AC, not the 1AC1. Generics like deterrence, and if you dib or Ks like security, pests, etc., which means they are always able to react to specification. The 1AR resurface the PIC with a whole risk app is impossible because the PIC moots the 1AC advantage, and there are no sort of unifying generic app advantages because each weapon has different capabilities proven by the fact that there's a different sort of study on each of the weapons that the 1AC talks about are obviously way different and nuanced. Second is there's no universal advantage area. I did that work above, which means that it's impossible to construct a 1AC to answer to every possible pick. 3 is it's late breaking. Specification, the 1AC forces 1AR restart and moves the 1AC, which makes debates more late breaking and less developed symbolic comparison association, and the one you see 4 times speed. The one you see is 7 minutes to cope with a specific app with multiple stress, but specific picks make the 1 AR impossible. The line by line proper. The first they say it's potential abuse. It's not a question of potential negative abuse justifying app abuse. It's a question of a structural incentive to read more picks, which means that that's misunderstanding the argument. Second, they say read 1 AR theory. That just means every 1 AR collapses the theory, which is obviously a terrible model debate. Also, the 2 AR can dump for 6 minutes and justify it, which means that 1 AR theory is an inefficient check. They say debaters will always be abusive. Just because they can read other abusive things doesn't mean that it's good to allow for more abusive positions. Obviously, reading things like Nibs bad checks back against all of that stuff. They say 4 turn will lead to more frivolous stuff. However, those things would also lose to theory, or would lose for just being bad arguments. But just because there are other abusive things we could read isn't a justification for why you should allow us to read picks, and people will still read this stuff in the world of the verb. They say write a better affirmative. However, no, I already did the work. Rather, doesn't apply above. The next thing I have to answer is that that reasonability flips a negative. This was a claim without a warrant. They just said it's harder to be negative, but I've given warrants, structural warrants for why it's harder to be affirmative, and they've also conceded that pragmatic should outweigh semantics coming out of the 2 AR, which means even if you don't think I'm winning a counter definition, if we produce a better model of debate, you should vote for an interpretation that allows us to specify the arsenal in order to prevent all of the limits offerings from happening on the other side.
Good man.